Usami Yuu is just trying to survive another morning commute, but the train is packed tighter than usual. Then, the air in the car suddenly drops 20 degrees. He turns around and finds himself standing in the shadow of something, or someone terrifying. She's tall, sharp-eyed, and currently looming over him like a predator marking its territory. Her gaze is a physical weight, pinning him against the train doors as his heart tries to drum its way out of his chest. He can't look away, even as his brain screams a warning. She's glaring at me. Wait, she isn't attacking? Behind her, a wall of salarymen is surging forward, and she's holding them back with a single hand against the glass. Her sharp eyes scan the crowd, jaw set, while Yuu stands safely in the small pocket of space she's carved out. He realizes the terrifying girl isn't a threat. She's a bodyguard. The train swerves, and for a split second, her composure slips. She grinds her teeth, flash of white serrated edges that belong in a shark tank rather than a high school hallway. Yuu's gratitude evaporates instantly. Eek. The doors hiss open, and Yuu doesn't walk out. He launches himself onto the platform. He puts as much distance between himself and those shark teeth as humanly possible. But as the adrenaline fades, the weight of his bag feels heavier. She helped him, and he ran away without a word. Suddenly, the ground vibrates. She's coming for him, a blur of blazer and short hair closing the gap with terrifying speed. Yuu freezes, certain this is the end. She skids to a halt, panting, and shouts through the panic, "I'm sorry." He tries to scramble away. But she's everywhere. Every move he makes, she mirrors, her presence overwhelming. He's trapped in the corridor of her intensity, wondering what he could have possibly done to deserve a pursuit like this. She's not looking for a fight. She's looking for directions. She stands there, fidgeting with her collar, her fierce expression betraying a deep, awkward shyness. She's a transfer student who's utterly lost on her first day. Can we go to school together? Yuu asks the obvious, why not just use GPS? Hitomi stares at her smartphone like it's an alien artifact. It turns out she only recently acquired the device and thinks phones are strictly for making calls. The predatory Amazon is actually just a girl who's a bit behind the times. Seeing her struggle makes the fear start to ebb. She isn't a monster. She's just incredibly intense. Yuu offers to show her around, and for the first time, the tension between them begins to thaw into something resembling a real conversation. They exchange names, Usami Yuu and Takano Hitomi, then the bombshell drops. She's a first year. She's younger than him. Yuu stares up at her towering height, then down at his own stature. She's younger than me. The awkwardness is still there, but it's softer now. They realize they share the same commute, and Hitomi asks if they can do this again tomorrow. Yuu agrees, and the request seems to lift a massive weight off her shoulders. And then it happens. The sharp lines of her face collapse into a radiant, genuine smile. It's bright. It's warm, and it hits Yuu like a physical blow to the chest. All the terror from the train ride is gone, replaced by a sudden frantic thumping in his heart. Okay. The spell is broken by a sudden realization. Hitomi was about to walk in the exact opposite direction of her destination. For all her height and those shark teeth, she's a total disaster with a map. Yuu catches her before she wanders off, realizing his school life just got a lot more complicated. If looks could kill, Usami would be 6 feet under. Those eyes aren't just sharp. They're a declaration of war. But as the train clears out, the predator's gaze starts to flicker with something else entirely, exhaustion. Takano isn't hunting, she's barely holding on. She admits her eyelids get heavy when she's on edge, leaving Usami to connect the dots. Ah, so that was a sleepy expression? Being the new kid is hard. But it's harder when your attempt at a friendly greeting sounds like a drill sergeant's roar. Takano remembers her big debut, trying to be nice and ending up looking like she was about to challenge the entire class to a cage match. She clenches her fist, the weight of the misunderstanding sinking in. It's not malice, it's just a massive, tragic backfire. Usami is ready to be the hero, offering a hand to guide her through school life. But Takano's troubles aren't just social, they're primal. Her face shadows over as she reveals her nemesis. There's an animal that hates me. It's a black cat. Small, sleek, and currently experiencing a full-on survival reflex. The moment Takano makes eye contact, the feline bristles with pure aggression. It's a total rejection. Sha. The cat vanishes like a blur, leaving a cloud of dust and a crushed high schooler in its wake. Takano's insecurity is spiraling now. She's convinced those sharp eyes and those teeth are a curse that no one can look past. She stares at Usami, desperate for a rebuttal she doesn't think is coming. Usami decides it's time for a remedial lesson in facial muscles. He encourages her to just try a little smile. She commits to it full force. Her face splits open to reveal a row of shark-like teeth that would make a great white jealous. Usami's soul practically leaves his body. What's with your face? It's not helping. In fact, the more she tries, the more it looks like she's about to unhinge her jaw and devour the neighborhood. The tension is visible in every jagged tooth. She's trying so hard it hurts, and the result is pure nightmare fuel. Usami stops the madness. He remembers the one moment the mask actually slipped, the genuine warmth he saw earlier. He leans in, his own face heating up as he drops the truth. One of your smiling faces from before was kinda cute, Takano-san. The word hits her like a physical shock. Her entire face turns a deep shade of crimson as she shies away, hands fluttering in panic. This is new territory. No one has ever used that word for her. Please stop calling me cute and the like. Through the embarrassment, Takano finds a small, shy smile that doesn't feel like a threat. It's soft, it's real. Usami points it out immediately. That's the one. That's the natural look she's been looking for. And just like that, the moment is gone. She tries to replicate it and immediately reverts to a predatory grin. But the spark is there. She's determined now, promising to put in the work at home. If praise is what it takes to find that smile again, she's ready to earn it. The school day ends, but the training doesn't. Late that night, Usami gets a notification that's part horror movie, part heartthrob. It's a selfie from Takano. She's practicing all right, but she's still got a long way to go before she stops looking like a hauntingly gorgeous terror. 2 fingers pulling at the corners of her mouth, sharp teeth bared to the mirror. The path to a perfect smile is long and jagged, but for Takano Hitomi, the effort has never felt better. The door swings open and my peace is officially dead. My little sister Kaoru doesn't believe in knocking, especially when she's got gossip that's currently burning a hole in her brain. She flops down, barely letting me get a word in before she drops the news. Our class got a new transfer student. She starts describing this girl like she's a legendary boss in an RPG. Tall, incredible curves, and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. My stomach does a slow somersault because I know exactly who she's talking about. But then Kaoru mentions the girl messed up her first greeting, and I realize Hitomi's social anxiety followed her into the classroom. While the class sits in frozen terror, Takano is back there having an absolute internal meltdown. Her face is bright red, her teeth are bared in a nervous snarl, and she finally manages to force the words out, "THTH very much." It's the least intimidating thing I've ever heard, but to the rest of the class it sounds like a declaration of war. The pressure is too much. She stutters one last time and then bolts out the door, like she's being chased by a pack of wolves, leaving the classroom in a state of pure shock. The guys behind her are convinced they just got marked for death, whispering, "The heck was she glaring at?" She wasn't glaring, guys. She was just trying to say hi. By the time PE rolls around, Takano has tried to reset her social meter, but she's still radiating that "don't talk to me" energy. Leave it to my sister Kaoru to be the only person in a 3-mile radius who thinks, yeah, she looks fun. She slides right into the seat next to her, completely oblivious to the danger. Kaoru has zero filter, and looking at Takano in a tracksuit, she just blurts out the obvious. "Takano-san, your boobs are huge." Takano freezes, her brain probably short-circuiting as Kaoru follows up with the ultimate boundary crosser. "Also, can I touch that?" Back in the present, I'm nearly jumping out of my skin. My sister is a menace. I grab her by the shoulders, my voice cracking as I demand the truth. "Did you touch that?" Kaoru just blinks at me, totally calm, and says, "Yeah, I touched it." I'm practically hyperventilating, waiting for her to tell me she got suspended or worse. She leans in, deadpan, and delivers the line that finally breaks my brain. "It was hard." My internal monologue is screaming, "Ha, hard." Then she shows me what actually happened. Kaoru didn't go for the chest. She went for the core. She lifts Takano's jersey and reveals a set of washboard abs that could deflect small arms fire. Takano is blushing so hard she might actually ignite as Kaoru marvels at the sheer density of it all, shouting, This feel. Kaoru is basically doing a scientific study on these things now, poking and prodding like they're a museum exhibit. She's describing the moderate tenderness and the toned firm texture while Takano just stands there, vibrating with awkwardness. She just wanted to pass gym class, and now she's being treated like a fitness model. The verdict is in. Takano has the ideal abs. Kaoru is officially a fan, introducing herself with a grin that could light up a stadium. Takano is still reeling from the sudden physical contact, but she manages a shaky "nice to meet you," realizing she might have just accidentally made her first friend. I sink back into my chair, the tension finally leaving my body. It was just the abs. My sister is just a fitness enthusiast, not a criminal, but as the silence settles, I realize I've got a whole new problem. I'm relieved, sure, but I'm also a little jealous. The narrator hits it on the head. Senpai was relieved, yet full of regret. There they are, the scary transfer student with the hidden muscles and the pint-sized force of nature who forced her way past the glare. It's a weird pairing, but in this school it might be exactly what Takano needs to survive. The hallway is quiet, and there she is, Takano, sitting like a lone, intimidating island on a bench. I can't leave her there, so I pull up a seat and ask if she's already visited the cafeteria. She looks up, her eyes sharp as ever, and then I see it. A mountain of sandwiches clutched in her arms like a prize. I can't help the woe that escapes my lungs. That's not a lunch, that's a logistics challenge. She admits it without a hint of irony. She just loves eating. Most girls her age are counting calories, but Takano is currently dismantling a bakery's worth of carbs. Looking at her height and those abs Kaoru was raving about, the math finally starts to track. I'm realizing she's just big in all sorts of ways, and her metabolism is clearly working overtime to keep up with that glare. Usually I'm the one pushing the conversation, but then she blinks and asks, "Won't you go with me?" She wants to check out a shop after school. It's a first for her, a genuine invitation, and it feels like a victory lap. But before I can even process the sentiment, she clasps her hands together and says, "That was a wonderful meal." She finished that entire stack in seconds. I'm starting to think she doesn't eat, she just deletes food. We make it to the station, standing in front of a crepe stand that looks like a neon pink fever dream. Takano looks at the menu like she's trying to decode a foreign language. Turns out she grew up in the middle of nowhere, no candy stores, no fancy sweets, just drinking tea with her grandma. This isn't just a snack for her, it's an expedition into a world she was never allowed to visit. The clerk is waiting. I breeze through my order, trying to keep it casual, but the silence from Takano's side is getting heavy. She's staring at the list of options, her pupils shrinking, her brain clearly grinding its gears against the sheer variety of toppings. I tell her to take her time, but I can see the steam starting to rise. She's reaching a critical failure point. The pressure snaps. She points a trembling finger toward the display board and blurts out, "Is the deep-fried chicken fine?" The clerk is confused, and I'm genuinely reeling. She came to a crepe shop and ordered a bucket of grease out of pure, unadulterated panic. That ain't crepe now, is it? I want to laugh, but the look of absolute despair on her face tells me she's currently dying of embarrassment. So here we are. I'm holding a delicate, sweet crepe, and Takano is hunched over a massive tray of fried chicken like she's a linebacker after a 4-hour practice. Even after that mountain of sandwiches at lunch, she's still going. Watching her spear those pieces of chicken with a toothpick, I realize she doesn't care about the aesthetic. She just follows her stomach wherever it leads. The toothpick goes in, she takes a bite, and the world just stops. The glare is gone. The intimidation evaporates. A soft blush creeps up her cheeks as she lets out a quiet, genuine yummy. It's the kind of expression that makes you forget she could probably bench press a small car. In this moment, she's just a girl who really likes fried chicken. She tries to recover some dignity, waving a piece of chicken around and claiming it's Instagrammable. I don't have the heart to tell her that no one is posting greasy meat to their aesthetic feed. She offers me a piece, her eyes darting to my crepe, but I'm content just watching her work. She's weird, she's hungry, and honestly, she's a lot of fun to be around. Just like at lunch, the food disappears in a blur. She lets out a satisfied sigh, looking down at the empty tray with a mix of pride and lingering hunger. I thought we were done, but then she mumbles something about getting potatoes on the way back. At this point, I'm not even surprised, I'm just impressed. The sun is starting to dip as we walk home. She's apologetic, worried she dragged me along for a weird detour, but I give her the truth. I enjoyed it. I tell her I don't mind being her escort for any future cravings. Her reaction is immediate, a full-body jolt of surprise and a stuttered, "Thank you very much." It's clear she's still scared of being alone in these places, but maybe she's a little less scared with me. She's already planning the next mission. Next time, she wants to try a teriyaki chicken steak crepe and another side of fried chicken, naturally. I guess for Takano, the way to a girl's heart is paved with savory proteins and zero regrets. Whether it's sandwiches or fried chicken, Takano Hitomi remains the most terrifyingly hungry girl in the first year. And with a physique like that, built from sheer willpower and a lot of calories, she's definitely earned every bite. The neighborhood kids are bolting before she even says hello. Takano stands frozen in the street, her tall frame casting a shadow that makes her look like a terrifying ghost story come to life to anyone under 4 feet tall. She's just standing there, hands twitching, wondering why her mere existence triggers a neighborhood-wide evacuation. Usami tries to play it cool, but even he's sweating as Takano explains her master plan for social integration. She's been doing the work, logging the hours in front of the mirror, and she's ready to deploy the secret weapon. She leans in, a predator's glint in her eyes, and declares, "I practiced my smile a hell lot, so I'll be using that to take care of this situation." They find the target audience at the local park. 2 boys just trying to enjoy their afternoon. Takano locks on, her height making her look like a final boss entering a low-level zone. The kids freeze, the gears in their heads grinding as they recognize the face from their most recent nightmares. The practiced smile hits the air and the response is instantaneous, panic, pure, unadulterated survival instinct. One kid's face contorts into a mask of terror as he bellows the neighborhood consensus. It's the man-eating woman. They don't just run, they scramble for their lives. The man-eating label hits Takano like a physical blow, her eyes losing their luster. But the comedy stops when one of the boys, Makun, loses his footing and hits the pavement hard. The terrifying monster vanishes, replaced by a girl who's genuinely worried about a scraped knee. From Makun's perspective, things are going from bad to worse. The giant is closing in. He sees the shark teeth and the sharp gaze, a literal man-eating woman filter over his vision as she reaches out. He's braced for the end, unaware that her heart is currently racing with pure maternal panic. Ryukun charges in for a heroic rescue, landing a desperate, tiny punch right against Takano's chest. He expects a roar, but she doesn't even flinch. Instead, she pulls him into a soft, clumsy embrace, her large frame suddenly acting as a shield rather than a threat. The silence in the park shifts from terrifying to heavy and warm. The kid stops struggling. He realizes he's not being eaten. He's being held by someone who smells like laundry detergent and sincerity. He looks up, the blush on his cheeks speaking louder than his words as he tells his friend, "This person's all right." Makun can't help but join the pile-on, leaning into the comfort of the giant who isn't a monster after all. Takano's face softens, her intimidation factor dropping to 0 as she offers a genuine soft-spoken apology. "It's my fault you fell down, sorry." The monster legend officially dies right there on the playground. Usami watches from the sidelines, slightly baffled by how quickly a life-or-death survival scenario turned into a group hug. One minute she's a man-eater, the next she's a neighborhood favorite. He can't help but smile, all the confusion has finally been cleared up for the better. The kids apologize for the man-eating rumors they heard at school, but then they turn their sights on Usami. They look at Takano's height, then down at Usami's lack of it, and the math in their heads leads to a devastating conclusion. One of them looks up with pure innocence and asks, "By the way, big bro, are you big sis?" The word child echoes through the park, and Usami's soul practically leaves his body. Misunderstandings aside, it turns into a regular day at the park. Takano is in her element, running and laughing with the boys while Usami watches her shine. He realizes that for all her fears about her appearance, her sincerity is what actually leaves an impression. She's finally just a girl playing in the park. Takano stops, her eyes narrowing as she spots a new mission. She's got that focused athlete look again, the one that usually precedes something impressive or something deeply awkward. A shuttlecock gets stuck in the tree, and the height difference between our duo becomes a tactical advantage. Before Usami can even suggest a ladder, Takano has already grabbed him by the waist. She hoists him up like a toddler reaching for a cookie jar. It's effective, it's efficient, and it's absolutely humiliating for Usami's dignity as a high school man. But hey, the shuttlecock is saved. Monday morning roll call is usually a mundane ritual. But the air in the room shifts the second Kobayashi-sensei reaches the tees. Takano, Hitomi answers with a quiet here, but her eyes are already locked onto him with a focus that feels less like a student and more like a predator. He tries to stay professional, telling himself a serious student is a blessing, but his nervous system is sounding the alarm. Well, this is a problem. That's not a gaze, that's a set of eyes marking its territory from the middle row with lethal intent. The chalk dust in the air feels like it's turning to static under the weight of her glare. Kobayashi's heart hammers against his ribs as he wonders what he could have possibly done to earn this level of spite. Why is she glaring at me like that? He tries to look away, to convince himself it's just his imagination, but every time he peeks back, those shark teeth are bared in what looks like a silent snarl. Oh. The denial dies instantly as he realizes she looks ready to hop over the desk and finish him. The lesson continues, but it feels more like a slow-motion interrogation. Those eyes, they are evidently radiating hostility towards this direction. He's just trying to explain algebra, but she's radiating enough heat to melt the ink right off the whiteboard. Safely hidden in the staff room, Kobayashi finally lets out a breath, thinking the ordeal is over until a shadow falls across the doorway. No way! Is she going to assassinate me? He's already mentally writing his will as she creeps closer through the hallway. She catches up to him, her face flushed and her eyes wide with what he assumes is the thrill of the hunt. I'm sorry, Kobayashi-sensei. He practically leaps out of his skin, his hands up in a desperate, pathetic surrender. He's bracing for the blow, but instead of a weapon, she holds out a notebook like a peace offering. I am sorry. There's something I didn't understand about the lesson. The lethal threat is just a student who got lost in the variables. The terror hasn't fully subsided, so Kobayashi goes into hyperdrive, explaining the math like his life depends on her comprehension. How about now? He's gesturing wildly while Hitomi sinks back into that terrifying, hyper-focused scowl of deep concentration. The predatory slit of her eyes suddenly shatters into a wide, sparkling realization. The transformation is absolute. The monster evaporates, leaving behind a girl whose relieved grin actually lights up the entire office. I understand now. She finally lets the mask slip, admitting her brain just short-circuits over numbers. I heard from way back that I have a troublesome face in class when I don't get something. The menacing aura was just the sound of gears grinding in her head. She leaves with a polite bow, her footsteps echoing down the hall and leaving Kobayashi stunned in his chair. What a good girl. He takes a long sip of his tea, realizing the man-eating monster might actually be the most earnest student he's ever taught. Yuu's stuck in class, but his eyes are glued to the window. Down on the field, the scary transfer student is currently surrounded by a whirlwind of high-energy girls, including his own sister, Kaoru. He watches Hitomi stand there, wondering if she's actually handling the social spotlight or just vibrating with internal panic. The girls decide to put the tallest girl in school in the most high-pressure spot of the match. Hitomi gives a shaky yes as she takes her post at the goal. She stands perfectly still, a silent sentinel watching the chaos of the soccer match unfold from a distance, while Kaoru tears up the turf with the energy of someone who definitely skipped her morning nap. Hitomi is facing a different battle. Her stomach is screaming louder than the crowd. She's zoning out on lunch options when a ball suddenly teleports into her personal space. The ball rockets toward her, but Hitomi doesn't block it. She dodges. Her body reacts with predatory instinct, arching back as the soccer ball screams past her. It's an incredible display of athleticism and raw muscle that leaves the entire field paralyzed in a collective, breathless silence. She's mortified. Instead of a heroic save, she just gave everyone a front-row seat to her accidental dodging skills. Oops, I dodged it, she thinks, her face going completely blank as the atmosphere across the grass turns heavy and confusing. The other girls are just relieved her face is intact, but Hitomi is done being a spectator in her own body. She locks in, her eyes narrowing as the next attacker approaches. I absolutely have to stop the next one. Ruko charges for the shot, but she's not running at a girl, she's running at a force of nature. Hitomi lets out a roar that's half desperation and half predator, those sharp teeth bared in a snarl that would make a professional goalie quit on the spot. The ball never stood a chance. She smothers the ball with her whole body, leaving the kicker stunned. From that moment on, the goal is a fortress. Whether she's diving through the air or intercepting a cross, Hitomi is everywhere at once, a blur of red-bowed intensity. The field is buzzing. Yeah, she dodged the first one, but stopped every single one after that. Hitomi is panting, her heart hammering against her ribs, completely unaware that she just earned the respect of the entire class. And then there's Kaworu. Seeing her friend's god-tier reflexes, she decides logic is for losers and tries to score on her own teammate. "It's you against me," she shouts, leaving the rest of the class to realize that Hitomi might be scary, but Kaworu is just purely chaotic. The whistle blows and the monster immediately deflates into a puddle of shy nerves. Kaworu isn't letting it go, though. I shouldn't have expected less of the one who has my ideal abs. The praise hits Hitomi harder than any soccer ball ever could. Up in the classroom, Yuu is beaming, watching Hitomi finally find her place, one save at a time. But his romantic moment is short-circuited when a leathery, mischievous voice crawls into his ear. "Man, you got some guts." The old teacher has been watching him watch her the whole time. Down on the field, Hitomi wipes the sweat from her brow, her shirt pulling tight to reveal the iron-hard results of her secret training. She's still the girl who scares children and teachers alike, but today, she's just the girl who didn't let a single ball pass. A single reference book stands between Takano Hitomi and total academic collapse. She reaches for the shelf with the same intensity she uses to save soccer goals, but this time, the enemy is Algebra 1. Her fingers tremble slightly against the spine as she whispers to herself, "Here we go." The silence of the bookstore is shattered by a voice that knows no volume control. Kaworu catches the monster of the soccer field out in the wild, and Hitomi nearly jumps out of her skin. She's cornered by a social butterfly while holding her academic shame, forced to admit her weakness. Yeah, I'm not very good at maths." Kaworu doesn't just offer help, she offers her brother like a sacrificial lamb. Hitomi's eyes go wide, her brain short-circuiting at the idea of meeting a stranger for a private lesson. She's vibrating with so much anxiety she's literally leaving afterimages behind. No. Doing it with someone I'd meet for the first time is impossible. Kaworu's momentum is an unstoppable force of nature, dragging Hitomi all the way to the front door of a very familiar-looking house. Hitomi stands frozen on the threshold, realizing she's about to enter the inner sanctum of the one guy who actually knows her secret. She wants to run, but Kaworu's grip is like iron, pulling her into the point of no return. Yuu wants nothing more than to live his best life with a popsicle when the universe decides to prank him. He turns the corner and stares directly into the panicked, wide-eyed gaze of the girl he's been crushing on. The air goes still as the dots finally connect. "Wah, Takano-san!" The bombshell drops. Kaworu and the senior she admires are siblings, and now she's sitting right in the middle of his personal space. The room feels 10 times smaller with her in it, her height making the bed look like a toy. She's glowing with a bashful heat that fills every corner, trying to figure out if this is a math lesson or a dream she's about to wake up from. Yuu makes a tactical retreat for refreshments, leaving the two girls alone in the heavy silence. Kaworu is still processing the fact that her brother actually has an acquaintance this cool. She's staring Hitomi down, realizing that the quiet boy she grew up with might have a lot more game than she ever gave him credit for. It starts with a gesture of peace and ends in a sticky catastrophe. The ice cream slides off the stick in slow motion, landing right in the center of Hitomi's shirt. She freezes, eyes darting down as the cold white puddle begins to soak into the fabric. Ah! Kaworu's hospitality dial goes from 0 to 100 instantly, and her solution is purely practical and entirely terrifying. She's already reaching for the hem, determined to get that shirt into the wash before the stain sets. Hitomi is backing away, hands up in a desperate defense as she stammers, "No, you don't have to go that far." Kaworu isn't taking no for an answer, closing the distance with the focus of a pro wrestler. The air is filled with the frantic clatter of shark teeth as Kaworu initiates a tactical shirt removal operation. Hitomi's face is a mask of pure, blushing terror, her iron-hard abs on display as she clings to her dignity with everything she's got. "I'll have to wash it after all. Take it off." In the middle of the chaos, Kaworu pauses to admire the view, her fingers literally tracing the results of Hitomi's secret training. Downstairs, Yuu is humming to himself, bags full of sweets and totally oblivious to the assault happening in his bedroom. He's thinking about how many snacks it takes to make a study session successful, unaware he's walking into a crime scene. The door swings open on a scene that defies every law of physics and brother-sister boundaries. Yuu freezes, the bags in his hands suddenly feeling like lead as he sees his sister pinned against his crush's stomach. Hitomi's brain makes a desperate, frantic leap for the only excuse she has left, her voice cracking as she begs for salvation. Please, please teach me maths. The math battle is finally over, leaving the room smelling like ink and absolute mental exhaustion. Yuu leans back, finally calling it. Let's call it a day. But across the table, Hitomi isn't moving. She's staring into the middle distance with a face so blank it looks like her soul decided to take an early bus home. Enter Kaoru, the human equivalent of a double-shot espresso, already radiating enough restless energy to power a small city. She's got the snacks, she's got the plan, and she's completely ignored the fact that Hitomi just survived 3 hours of trigonometry. Before anyone can protest, the living room is officially converted into a private theater. Kaoru whips out a DVD cover that looks like a nightmare's fever dream. It's a horror movie called Bring, and the ghost on the cover looks like she hasn't slept since the Heian period. Hitomi's eyes widen until they're practically dinner plates, her voice a tiny high-pitched squeak as she forces out a lie. Ah, yes. Absolutely. She's sweating now, her shark teeth chattering a frantic rhythm against her lip. She tries the world's worst redirection, stammering that maybe they should watch something else because it's too bright for horror. Her hands are up like she's trying to ward off an actual spirit, but her blush is giving away the game. She's one jump scare away from a total system crash. Yuu tries to be the voice of reason, suggesting a skip. But Kaoru is a chaos demon who just wants to see Hitomi lose it. Trapped between her pride and a ghost story, Hitomi locks in. She clenches her jaw, looking like a soldier heading to the front lines as she mutters, I will try to do my best here. The lights go down, and the reality of the situation hits. They're packed together on the floor, the blue light of the TV washing over them as the opening credits roll like a funeral march. Every muscle in Hitomi's body is coiled like a spring. Her internal monologue is just one long, terrified scream. Is this going to be okay? The movie is barely 5 minutes in, and Hitomi is already folding. First the hands over the eyes, then the frantic peeking through the gaps, her breath hitching every time a floorboard creaks on screen. Even Yuu is starting to get worried not about the ghost on the screen, but about the girl next to him who looks like she's practically jumping out of her own skin. Then it happens. The screen erupts with a shrieking, gray-faced specter reaching out for the camera. Kaoru is actually laughing, totally unfazed by the digital monster, but she doesn't realize that the real horror show isn't happening on the monitor. It's happening right beside her. They turn to check on her, and the air leaves the room. Hitomi isn't just scared, she has transcended fear. Her eyes are wide, bloodshot voids, her shark teeth are bared in a primal snarl, and her face is a mask of such pure, unadulterated terror that she looks 10 times more demonic than the ghost they just saw. Even Kaoru is stunned. It's the kind of expression that could end a war. The credits roll over a silent room. Hitomi is literally dripping with cold sweat, her hair matted to her forehead as she stares into the void. She's a ghost of herself, whispering the only thing she can manage. I tried my best after all outside. The sun has set, leaving her to face the walk home in the dark. Kaoru can't help herself, giving Hitomi one last poke that nearly sends her through the ceiling. But as a peace offering, she hands over a new disc, something wholesome to cleanse the palate. It's titled Cute Animals and the Handsome Gorilla. It's the perfect antidote, a promise of fluffy kittens and primate companionship to soothe her shattered nerves. Hitomi heads home, clutching the animal movie like a holy relic. She gets into her pajamas, pops the disc in, and settles in for some fuzzy animal therapy. But Kaoru has a fatal flaw. She never puts DVDs back in the right cases. The screen flickers to life, and instead of a handsome gorilla, a new nightmare begins. Hitomi has just walked straight back into the lion's den. She's done. Just a shell of a girl clutching a plush shark for dear life, staring at the screen with eyes that have seen too much. 2 horror movies in one day was never the plan, but for Hitomi, the real world was already scary enough. Now, even the kittens are out to get her. Nezu is just trying to survive his morning commute until he spots a familiar face in the crowd. Yuu isn't alone, he's walking right next to a mountain of a girl, and Nezu's brain just hits the blue screen of death. He stares, his eyes widening in pure, unadulterated shock at the sight of his short friend seemingly living the dream, Yuu walking alongside some boobs. The school bell hasn't even finished ringing before Nezu is at Yuu's desk, vibrating with pure envy. He slams his hands down, nearly knocking Yuu out of his seat as he demands an explanation for the morning's mystery girl. Hey Yuu, this morning you and some boo. No wait, that ain't it. Nezu's face is a mix of betrayal and frantic curiosity as he looms over Yuu. Yuu just blinks, trying to process the sudden interrogation before offering the simple truth. It's my little sister's classmate who lives across the street from our house. Her name is Takano-san. Nezu's mind is still stuck on the train, his eyes drifting as he admits she certainly left an impression. Yuu knows he's in for a headache, explaining Hitomi's intense look as a marathon he isn't ready to run. He clenches his teeth, sweating as he realizes there's a massive misunderstanding brewing that's just too much work to fix. Yuu spots her by the entrance, a tall, silent shadow waiting for the world to notice her. Nezu sees his chance to finally get a closer look, trailing behind Yuu with a mix of nerves and stubborn determination. Nezu isn't about to let Yuu have all the luck. He's already planning his opening move. Heh, you want to steal a march on me, but that ain't happening. I'll take advantage of you to make her acquaintance too. He leaps out with a shout, forcing a casual greeting that's about as subtle as a car crash. The air in the hallway instantly drops 20 degrees as the girl turns, her presence looming over Nezu with a heavy, crushing intensity. Her eyes are buried in shadow, sharp enough to cut glass, and her expression is so intensely sharp it practically hums with a danger he wasn't prepared for. What? She's big in several ways that Nezu's brain is currently too short-circuited to categorize. Yuu, completely immune to the aura of impending doom, casually does the introductions while Nezu stands there, his mind racing through every scary rumor he's ever heard about tall girls. Nezu manages a trembling greeting, his voice barely making it past his throat as Hitomi's silent intensity radiates like a heat wave. He stares up at her, realizing that the nice girl Yuu described looks more like a final boss than a classmate. Hello? A teacher sticks his head out of the office, calling for Yuu at the worst possible moment. Yuu tells them to wait for a second, leaving the terrified Nezu alone in a vacuum of awkward silence. Don't do anything strange to Takano-san, he shouts as he runs off, leaving Nezu to fend for himself. Nezu is fighting for his life, trying to find a topic that won't get him eaten. Are you doing this with Yuu for long? Hitomi's voice is a low, cautious rumble that sends a shiver down his spine. No. The silence stretches out, heavy enough to sink a ship. Hitomi's heart is racing. She's convinced her lack of social skills is being interpreted as pure malice. Did something make her angry somehow? She decides she has to fix this and be social, no matter how much it hurts. Nezu tries to play it cool, complimenting her height, and assuming she's a total hit with the guys. But every word just adds to the pressure inside Hitomi's head, making her feel like a cornered animal rather than a popular girl. She's panicking because she can't even look her senpai in the eye. He brought up a subject, and yet I can't even look at him directly. I'm being really rude, right? She knows what she has to do. She's worked on this, and it's time to unveil her friendliest look. Nezu watches the girl's face distort, the skin tightening around a set of teeth that don't belong in a high school hallway. She thinks she's being welcoming, but the result is a jagged, predatory grin that makes his heart try to escape through his ribs. That's not true. With my smile, it's the most terrifying invitation he's ever received. Hitomi sees the color drain from his face and fears she's failed. Yuu trots back, completely oblivious to the psychic damage that's been dealt, but Nezu is already halfway to the exit. And then nothing at all. He's gone in a blur of survival instincts, leaving Hitomi more confused than ever. The next day, Nezu is still processing the fact that he's alive. Yuu, being the purest soul in the building, just blinks and smiles like nothing happened. Her smile is awfully adorable too. Nezu stares at him, the nightmare grin flashing before his eyes, as he realizes Yuu isn't just brave, he's playing a completely different game. He hides his face in his hand, exhausted by the sheer gap in their realities. Yuu, you're unbelievable. And so, the misunderstanding continues. The sky didn't just leak, it opened up and tried to drown the city. By the time they hit the pavement of their neighborhood, Yuu and Hitomi are less students and more swamp creatures. Hitomi stands there, dripping, mud streaking her blazer as she finally exhales, Sigh, finally made it home. It was a total disaster, one car, one puddle, and a tidal wave of filth. But as Hitomi tries to wring out her hair, Yuu realizes the rain has turned her white uniform into something far more revealing. He stares at the damp fabric clinging to her frame, his face heating up faster than the sidewalk after a storm. Yuu offers a polite goodbye, ready to retreat before his heart explodes, but Hitomi freezes at her front door. The panic in her eyes isn't for a monster this time. It's for the keys she realized are sitting safely on her kitchen counter while her mother is out for the day. She tries to play it cool, insisting she'll just wait under the eaves, but the shivering says otherwise. Hitomi looks down at her smaller senior, her eyes wide and pleading, and something in Yuu just snaps. He forgets the height gap, the scary reputation, and his own nerves as he barks out a protest. That's no good. If she stays out here in those wet clothes, she's catching a cold, and that's a problem he won't allow. Before she can overthink it, his hand is on her wrist, warm and surprisingly firm against her cold skin. He pulls her along, his face set in a mask of sheer determination that leaves her completely stunned. Come to my house. It's not an invitation, it's a rescue mission. Safe inside, Yuu goes into full host mode, tossing her a towel and gesturing toward the bathroom with frantic energy. He promises to take care of her muddy uniform, handing her a change of his own clothes to wear in the meantime. Hitomi can only nod, disappearing behind the sliding door, while Yuu tries to figure out how to breathe again. The hum of the washing machine fills the silence as Yuu diligently scrubs the mud from her blazer. He remembers how often Kaoru makes a mess of her things, but this feels different, weightier. Just as he's finishing, her voice drifts through the door, small and wavering, calling out to him with a tone that sets off every alarm bell in his head. The door slides open, and Yuu's soul nearly leaves his body. The shirt that fits him perfectly is struggling for its life against Hitomi's curves, the buttons holding on by a literal thread. Blushing a deep, glowing crimson as she clutches at the hem, she stammers, I am sorry. The shirt you let me borrow is a bit too small. Yuu is currently short-circuiting, realizing too late that his average frame is no match for her height. As Hitomi shifts, the tension becomes too much, a button pings off like a stray bullet, and Yuu's hands fly up to his eyes. He's babbling apologies, desperate to find a solution before the rest of the shirt decides to quit. Of course, that's exactly when the door to the house slams open and the chaos bringer arrives. Kaoru strolls in, mud-stained and cheerful, only to find her brother in a state of total collapse and their guest looking like an exploding fashion statement. Oh, big bro, you are just in time. Kaoru takes one look at the situation and decides to play dress-up with their guest, but the results are a disaster. Hoodies won't zip, flannels won't close, and even the loose-fitting stuff leaves Hitomi practically immobilized. It turns out that when you're built like a track star, standard male medium is just a suggestion that her body flat-out rejects. Yuu is hiding behind his hands, his face a permanent shade of help, while Kaoru digs through the back of the closet. She emerges with a mischievous glint in her eye and a single piece of fabric. The only thing with a good size I found is this apron. Yuu's scream of protest is lost to the wind with the sudden dread that the scary beauty is about to become a scary chef. Hitomi stands there, a vision of absolute unintentional lethality, in a shirt that's 3 sizes too small. She brushes a wet strand of hair behind her ear, her sharp eyes softening with a vulnerability that only Yuu seems to see. The rain might have stopped outside, but the storm in this laundry room is only just beginning. A pencil scratches against paper like a blade against a whetstone. Takano Hitomi isn't just studying for a test, she's engaging in psychological warfare with her textbook. The air in the library is heavy, vibrating with a focus so sharp it feels dangerously tangible. Yuu slides the door open and immediately hits a wall of pure, unadulterated menace. Those isn't a greeting, it's a target acquisition. Her eyes lock onto him with a predator's precision, effectively freezing the blood in his veins. He manages a shaky hello, realizing the entire room is deserted. Hitomi looks around, genuinely baffled that she's the only one left in the stacks. Yuu doesn't have the heart to tell her she's been radiating a leave or die frequency. He just sweat drops and delivers the truth. It's because of the aura you emit when you're studying. Most people would run, but Yuu is different. He sees the girl behind the glare and decides to brave the storm, pulling up a chair to get his own work done. Hitomi's expression shifts. the sharp lines of her face softening just a fraction as she realizes she won't be finishing the afternoon in total isolation. Yuu tries to focus, but his brain is a highlight reel of yesterday's wardrobe disaster, specifically how those clothes absolutely failed to contain her. He's hyper-aware of her every movement until a sharp rattle from the top shelf snaps him back to reality. A heavy box of books is teetering right above his head. Hitomi doesn't think, she launches. She's airborne in a heartbeat, her mouth agape in a desperate, toothy roar that looks more like a strike than a rescue. She screams "Senpai" with enough force to rattle the windows. The world turns upside down in a rush of gray fabric and a heavy thud. Yuu finds himself flattened against the library floor, his vision filled with a very panicked, very close Hitomi. She's hovering over him, checking for injuries while her own heart is clearly trying to beat its way out of her chest. He's alive, but his brain is currently short-circuiting. Being this close to her means seeing every lash, every nervous twitch of her eyes, and feeling the literal heat radiating off her. He stammers out that he's okay, but his dazed expression says he's definitely not okay. He's ascending to another plane of existence. A door slides open. The teacher is checking on the noise. In a moment of pure, unthinking panic, Hitomi pulls Yuu into the shadows of the bookshelves. They are pressed together in the cramped space, breaths mingling, as the faculty members' footsteps echo through the silence. Yuu's heart is hammering so loud he's sure the whole school can hear it. The teacher mumbles about the fallen books, oblivious to the high-stakes romantic drama happening 3 feet away. As the door finally clicks shut, the silence returns, but the tension doesn't leave. Yuu looks down and realizes his fingers are tightly interlaced with hers. Neither of them lets go. The school bell rings with jarring impact, shattering the spell. They spring apart, faces burning, as they realize they've been standing in the dark like that for far too long. Yuu manages a quick goodbye and heads for the door, but Hitomi stays frozen in the hallway, her hands still tingling where his touch lingered. She can't even look him in the eye as they part. Left alone, the reality of the moment finally crashes down on her. Her face erupts into a crimson blush that would make a sunset jealous. She's so flustered she can barely process the greeting from her classmates, her hand clutched over her heart like she's trying to keep it from jumping out of her chest. The library aura was scary, but this new feeling? This is terrifying.